Let's get into it and see what's going on, what the latest with COVID-19 is, some of the things we've heard, some of the things we can learn, and we've been blessed with the appearances of our friend Dr. Dennis Norem from Mercy Health throughout this entire pandemic, and we are grateful he's with us again this morning. Dr. Norem, good morning to you.
Good morning to you guys.
How's everything going this morning?
I'm doing well, and I'd like to add one other representation. I also am very involved in the local medical society, the Winnebago County Medical Society.
Yes.
And the reason I bring that up is in the last few weeks we've had meetings with our legislators. Obviously, they had to be virtual, which worked out fine. And Maurice West made an interesting observation, which I think was very pertinent. He's been a little bit concerned that so much of the discussion about COVID has been tainted really by the politics. One side or the other. Depending on which side you're on, you don't believe the other side. And people have done things and believe things based on sort of their political affiliations, regardless of which party. Having said that, I'd like to compliment you guys that I think our discussions, we've really avoided politics as much as possible. I don't think there's been any influence on one side or the other. We just try to deal with what's going on and what the facts are.
Yeah, that's been our goal since we got rolling on this one. Yeah, to pick political sides on it basically shoots a hole in it anyway. We kind of want to cover what's going on, what the latest is that you've heard, some of the reasoning behind things. People can make up their own mind on how they want to go with it, but I certainly don't want to steer them in one direction or another. We're polarized enough on things.
Absolutely, and hopefully after this week, maybe things will calm down a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll flatten the curve, too. So,
some lofty goals there, Doc.
Dr. Norem, I'm looking at what's going on in Europe here. You got Germany becoming the latest European country to embark on a partial shutdown today. Authorities across the continent are scrambling to flatten the rapid rise in infections. New restrictions varying in strictness across Europe. Germany, restaurants, bars, theaters, cinemas, gyms, and other leisure facilities closed again today in a 4-week, what they call wave breaker shutdown that seeks to force daily new infections back down to manageable levels. Let's see, where else? We're over in England. They're headed for a tougher lockdown. That starts Thursday. Non-essential shops and hairdressers closing for a month. Along with gyms and pools, people allowed to leave home for only a short list of reasons, including exercise. Domestic and international travel is also discouraged. Austria, Spain, all across Europe, we're looking at some pretty heavy shutdowns happening.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, this is part of that wave phenomenon. I think with the virus, it's really now everywhere. And I think the other thing that is happening, we talked a little bit about it, appears that the virus has probably mutated slightly, and it's more infectious. Maybe no more dangerous, but certainly more infectious, more easily spread. I also saw a story here, I think in one of the Dakotas, that the health officials are kind of getting frustrated because it seems to be everywhere. A lot of people are getting it, don't really even know where they picked it up, in spite of being careful. I know that's a little discouraging, but I think we still have to attack it by trying to limit the spread as much as possible.
When you say more infectious, and I know you're not an infectious disease guy or anything like that, but what does that mean? The transmission method has changed? The chemistry of the virus itself is just more apt to latch on to something? What does more infectious mean?
It's more apt to latch on to something. Viruses tend to run at different levels of infectivity. For instance, we know the flu virus is pretty easily spread. Things like some of the measles, mumps, and those type of viruses have different levels of ability to spread more easily. It has to do with its ability to attach to the host. It also has to do with the fact that fewer particles may be more likely to cause an infection versus having to have more particles. As we've talked about droplets versus aerosols, the droplets have more particles. They're probably much more infectious if you get exposed to droplets. But aerosols can also spread it. And then you get into the surface spreading, which is not well worked out yet. We know the virus survives on surfaces, but it doesn't seem to be nearly as infectious once it's on a surface, depending on the type of surface.
Okay, so just you remember all that stuff you were wiping down before, then you stop wiping it all down. Well, you go ahead and wipe it all
Go
down
back to
again
wiping.
if you want to.
Okay.
The order hasn't come out yet. There's been a lot of talk about should there be a national mask mandate, and once again, trying to leave politics out of it. It's a highly divisive subject on a national mask mandate, much more now than what we have is really heavy-duty suggestions and demands by certain stores to go into. What's your thought on a national mask mandate, and will it do any good? And let me just attach one thing before you answer. I read something over the weekend saying over the past month, over 75% of the people who have wound up testing positive for the coronavirus have also been people who said they have diligently done the hand sanitizing and mask wearing and social distancing and still wound up with it.
Yeah, I think that kind of gets back to my point of several areas of the country now. People are confused as to where did I get this? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I struggle with that. I think everybody should wear a mask and social distance. You make it a mandate, how do you enforce that? Then you get into these issues or situations where people get into fights, stabbings. We've had people killed over this. I just don't know how you enforce that if you call it a national mandate. But I think it's something we should absolutely do. And again, a mask is not 100%. Washing your hands isn't 100%. It's all trying to reduce your risk of exposure. And certainly if everybody wore masks and social distance, we would still have spread of the coronavirus. We already know that. But it would be certainly less likely to spread than if you don't do those things.
Yeah, I mean, and just going back to the more infectiveness of it, the virus hasn't mutated to evade masks, right? Like that effectiveness is still that barrier for, especially for particulates, hasn't changed, right? It's still the same level of effectiveness.
Correct. Again, and that's dependent on what it's writing on. The droplets, the mask. A good mask is very effective at reducing droplet spread. A good mask is somewhat effective with aerosols, but that also gets around your mask. And the feeling is if it's a little more infectious at lower amounts, it gets on those aerosols, it's more likely to attach on to another person and infect them. But again, I don't want anybody out there to think that we don't want people to continue to wear effective masks, social distance, wash their hands, and reduce gatherings. I mean, that's the big concern here as we move into the holiday season. What's going to happen when people want to get together?
And we're hearing different things from different people. You got the CDC recommending citizens avoid traveling to friends or relatives' homes, only hosting dinner guests who reside in a single household. Leave all the windows open in the house if possible. Eat outside if you can. Don't serve it family style. Serve it this way. It seems the stack of recommendations is all leading toward one common goal, which is don't do this.
I believe so. I think in a perfect world, if we could all be totally by ourselves, 100 feet from anybody, and outside somewhere, probably nobody would get COVID. Well, totally impractical. We do have to have contact with other people, and all we can do is try to limit our exposure as much as we can and try to get through this resurgent wave of coronavirus, which clearly is really hitting us hard right now.
We've been pounding the drum for testing. We need testing and accurate testing and quick testing, and also contact tracing seems to be the two big ones that we've been talking about for a while. We had a COVID outbreak here, not outbreak, but a case here at the station. We did sort of contact tracing within the company. We figured out who was with who and did that, but I don't remember any medical professionals or governmental bodies figuring out who the positive case had talked to. Are we stalling on contact tracing, or are there any plans that you've heard in place to make this maybe a little bit more streamlined?
Well, I think some areas of the country are doing some fairly good contact tracing, but I think the virus has kind of gotten away from us. We just don't have enough personnel to do it effectively. I believe our health department does some contact tracing through some of the testing. But again, there are so many different labs doing so much testing in different places, and reporting the positives does not always get back to a common entity to allow contact tracing. At least here in Illinois, I don't think that's happening very efficiently. Some areas of the country are doing better. Other areas are just totally overwhelmed. There's just no way to practically do it.
I was going to say, in a nation of 330 million people, coming up with a firm and robust system for contact tracing seems like an insurmountable task.
I would agree. It would be an insurmountable, or is an insurmountable task, unless we had the ability to suddenly hire tens of thousands of contact tracers to try to do this job. I just don't know how practically you could do it. As things calm down and the rates of positivity decrease, you might have half a chance to get a hold of it again. But right now, I think it's probably not very practical.
You mentioned the flu a little bit earlier in the talk, and out in California, we had our first case of somebody who tested positive for the COVID and also had the flu at the same time. Was this something you
win something, don't you?
Yeah,
I think you get a new car or something for that.
Is this something we were expected to happen, to people to contract both at the same time, or is this another curveball we're getting?
No, I think we have some expectation. I believe there's been some positive flus floating around our community, but I don't believe anybody's had both. It is flu season, and normally we're beating the drum to get everybody immunized. And I know we've talked about that fact that please everybody go out and get immunized for the flu. Having both is the kind of double whammy that you don't want to have. It remains to be seen whether that's going to be a major problem in terms of morbidity and mortality for people getting both. I think we just don't know yet, but it is a big concern.
Dr. Norem, aside from COVID-19, what about and I'm reading more and more about this. I just finished reading an article here about there's a daycare down in, I believe, in Georgia, where they interviewed a bunch of the parents there talking about the mental challenges of what's going on here and the ramifications of that, how that's trickling down, how they're finding younger kids who are finding themselves in the throes of depression without having any idea what depression is or what's going on with them due to the lockdown scenarios, and moms and dads having trouble keeping themselves, I guess, mentally afloat as well. The lockdowns, I understand, in some cases are absolutely necessary, but are there efforts being undertaken to look at some of the side effects of what's going on here mentally for people?
I think absolutely. I see some articles occasionally on the mental aspects, and we've talked a little bit, I think, previously about how we're seeing higher levels of depression, substance abuse, alcoholism, domestic violence. All of those things have increased. I think you hit on an interesting comment about kids. I know that my grandson out in Tucson, I had a friend, and they were talking about this friend, a second grader, who really did some abnormal behavior, some acting out behavior, and they were talking about the fact that they couldn't understand why that child would do that. Well, I think it was because the child was in a family where the husband didn't want the kids to go anywhere, play with anybody. They were locked in the house for, I think, 6 or 8 weeks, and the kid just didn't really know what to do with himself, and did some physical, nothing major, but some physical type things that just were totally out of character. And I think we're going to see more and more of this kind of behavior.
We've talked about pandemic fatigue before. Numbers are some of the highest we've seen for a while. How dangerous is pandemic fatigue right now if we don't kind of take care until Thanksgiving?
I think it's a huge factor right now. We were all, 4 or 5 weeks ago thinking, we're on the downside, we're getting out, we're doing a few things. It's very hard now to go back. You can see what's happening with restaurants here in town are defying orders to close. People are more angry. Boy, I'm really concerned about that. But now we have to be a little more vigilant, and especially the idea that we're not going to celebrate holidays with the usual family friends because of this COVID thing. I think it's a big black cloud coming our direction.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true, and it doesn't seem to, it's not one of those where we're looking down going, all right, well, hold out until the 1st of January, and, then things are cool. We're looking down a tunnel, and we're not seeing any lights.
Absolutely, and that's the most disturbing part of this. If we could all had a date that said, January 1st, this is going to be over, I think we could all suck it up for a few weeks and get through it. But nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen and when this is finally going to calm down.
Yeah, that, and I was looking at something also the other day that I understand. You were talking about restaurants and being upset by all of this. Some of the numbers about infections, 75% of them being people who were in healthcare or had been exposed to someone in a convalescent setting sort of thing. 2% of it being restaurant workers, but restaurants are getting the shutdown. Yeah,
it's disturbing a little bit. Our restaurant's really a big problem right now when you see that it's still facilities, convalescent centers, nursing homes, assisted living. And the other disturbing statistic that I saw that 50% of people who have someone in their household positive with COVID are going to become COVID within 4 to 5 days. So really home settings are becoming more prevalent as the place where people are getting it. You can't shut down the house.
No. Yeah, there's just no wrapping yellow tape around the garage going, sorry, you guys got to come back at another time. Dr. Norem, speaking of time, that runs us out. We really appreciate you, as always, you taking time out of your day and each and every Monday to join us for COVID-19 chat. And if you're up for it, we'd love to do it again next week.
All right. I will see you next week, guys.
We appreciate it. Dr. Dennis Norem from Mercy Health.